Welcome back and thank you for staying with KTN Prime. Now we're now joined by Principal Secretary in the State Department of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Development under the Ministry of Cooperative and Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. You know her very well, Susan Mangeni. Good evening and thank you so much for making time. So straight to it, let's begin with the fact that this department is a newly formed department. Where are we at in terms of MSMEs?
Thank you so much,
Karibu.
Madam Mazuri.
Yes, Karibu.
Yeah, so thank you for inviting me here after a long time. I want to thank the producer of this program and then, of course, the whole KTN fraternity for this opportunity.
Karibu anytime.
You know, in the recent past, it's been so difficult even to get such an opportunity, but I thank God, heavens are opening up.
Yes.
And I want to pray that we continue this way, where you give us a platform to come and share on the opportunities which are there for our Kenyans, especially the Kenyans at the bottom of the economic pyramid, who form my sole purpose and the sole purpose of the State Department of MSME. So the State Department of MSME, as you have rightly put it, is a newly formed, let me not say newly formed, because we are about to, almost 2.5 years or about 3 years. But this is the first time in this country since independence that we've had an administration that has placed renewed focus and attention to the MSME sectors. And also globally, the MSME sector has started also gaining momentum, and especially in the last about 8 years, and we even had the UN also giving it proper recognition. And now every year, June 27 is International Day for MSME. It shows how now everybody across the globe has started realizing the critical role that MSME play in our economy. And here back home, MSME are the backbone of our economy, currently, contributing close to 40% to our GDP, even though we are still below the global average, which is 60%. And also most of the jobs that we have currently are generated from the MSME, even though, again, majority of them are still not so much secure and sustainable, because most of our Kenyans of the working age are playing or are occupying the informal sector space. And we have like a potential workforce of about 20 million, only 3.5 million are formally employed. 2.5 million are in the private sector, about 1 million we are in the civil service. So then we have majority of our Kenyan people of the working age now who are trying to find a way, hustling or surviving, who are in the informal sector. And that's why now it became necessary for any government, by the way, and it should have happened long time ago, but we want to thank His Excellency the President who realized for us to grow our economy, for us to create jobs for our young people, we have to support MSME to become more deliberate and intentional with programs, or rather with interventions that can support them, can formalize them, increase their visibility, formalize them, make them more visible, so then they can compete well in the market, they can become more competitive and create sustainable jobs. So that's the space that MSME hold. But also, 98% of all businesses in Kenya, if you want to appreciate the role of MSME, they are MSME. 98%. The corporates only occupy 2%. Unfortunately, most of our MSME are micro. So the micro, and most of those micro MSME are informal. And why are they informal? They're informal because they have had challenges, of course, with complex regulatory framework, taxation, those licensing, and the burden of compliance, the burden, the cost burden of compliance, and then of course access to financing have been issues that affect most MSMEs and hinder their growth and even to create sustainable jobs, even for themselves.
Okay.
I'm looking at a sole proprietor who is an MSME. I'm looking at Mama Mboga who wakes up every morning, goes to Gikomba, gets a vegetable, or the Ukulima market there gets a vegetable, and that become her source of daily income. That's where she gets food, that's where she pays her rent, that's where she pays school fees and all that obligation that she has. So it is her job. So we want to make that job become more secure, become more, sustainable, so that at the end of the day, when Susan, wakes up in the morning, going to the office, the Mama Mboga who wakes up from her home, going to get the burgers and going to the market, also considers that as her job, her day-to-day occupation. Now, you realize that the current administration is championing a bottom-up economic transformation agenda. And this recognizes that we have many Kenyans who are not participating effectively in the economy due to certain barriers, some of which I've already alluded to, access to affordable credit, and many of those that I'll be discussing as we move on. So MSME, transformation of MSME then was flagged out as a core pillar of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, alongside agricultural productivity, housing, affordable housing, universal health care, as well as digital and super highway. So why did we flag out MSME? It's because we see it as the only opportunity through which we are going to create jobs, even self-jobs for majority of Kenyans, and we see it as the only sector through which we can get to grow our private sector, through which we can drive corporates from them, because if we grow them so that they can scale up and become large corporates, that's how our economy will grow, and that's how sustainable jobs will be created. So how are we going to transform our MSME economy? Because that was a commitment under BETA. So we have 5 key commitments which we made, which I will wish to update where we are. The first one will be to decriminalize work. And a good example, look at our hawkers, look at our boda. Everybody looks at them so negatively. But if there comes a day when bodas across the country will say, today we are not working, like hatuko works, hatuko site, the way they usually say in Sheng, like they down their tools and they say we are not going, our economy will crash because of the role, the significant role that they play in the transport sector, in the logistics sector. Everything will come to a standstill. Now, again, if it comes a time when these hawkers, these Mama Mbogas, people that we have been seeing running battles with them, especially in major towns and cities like here in Nairobi, where you're having county askaris running with them. If also one day they say we are clearing off, we are not going to the street again, the economy will crash. So now, His Excellency the President saw that as a huge opportunity, and many economies that are doing well, you see all work has been decriminalized, and there is work is work. So it's incumbent of us who are in authority to find a way of making those working spaces become more decent by designating certain secure areas and spaces that our hawkers now can settle down. And today, as we speak, what we have achieved in the last 2 years, you've seen the president going across the country commissioning markets. That's one of the things we're doing, so that we create now those facilities which are modern markets with cold storages across the country. And we are committed to at least in every constituency having a modern market. You designate as this is the trading spaces for all our trade traders within those spaces, and everybody will know if I want to buy something, this is where I go.
Okay.
So we have already started achieving that. That's one way of trying to decriminalize the work and formalizing them.
Okay.
So where I sit also, we have an agency called MSEA. So we are working, how do we formalize? How do we make these people become more visible, become more known? Like in other major cities across the world, you find there is a very good, the relationship between the MSMEs, even those at the micro level with the large enterprises. For example, if you went to New York, and I like giving that as an example, and you visited like the Fifth Avenue, which is one of the most popular and most expensive probably street in the world, because of housing various top fashion houses.
Yes.
Outside the door of those top fashion houses, you'll also find the MSMEs there. Hawkers there also laying their good.
Yeah.
There they have diversified purchasing power, and these everybody who is trading in those spaces is known. There is no running battles.
Okay.
Everybody pays their taxes, so there is coexistence, there is cleanness, and there is security. So if you want to buy the high quality stuff, you walk into those designer shops, you buy. If you want to buy those lower quality, you also at liberty to do that. That's how we are trying to discuss with now our county government to see that how that will work out, because those hawkers, and there are very many in numbers, if they hold our economy, they play a critical role, they pay taxes, even sometimes indirectly through VAT when they buy salt to season.
It's a good thing, sorry to cut you short, but it's a good thing you've talked about the issues of salt, because the cost of living goes hand in hand with the cost of business. What exactly is the government doing to ensure that we have an ease in doing business, the environment, the business environment is apt?
So the second commitment, I will still respond you with the second commitment that we made, was to address the regulatory framework and the compliances to ease the cost of doing business, and then to make it easier for our MSMEs or the Kenyans to venture into the into business or rather MSME space. One of the achievements that we've done, which was part of our pillar on super digital highway, was to digitize government services. Today, if you went to eCitizen, we have uploaded more than 22,000 government services. For example, if you want today to register a company, you can do it at the comfort of your home, wherever you are. You just need 1,050 bob, because 50 bob now is to gain you is the fee for eCitizen, and then after you pay that, you'll suggest a name. You reserve the name. You have 24 hours so that your name can be searched after that. If there is no any other name, existing that can compete with whatever you have and cause confusion, then you'll get the feedback again, just on your phone. Then from there, you'll be guided through the next step, where now you pay 10,000 shillings to get a company. But even at the level where you have paid 1,050 bob, we will still have a business name, and you can still do that. So remember, earlier on, you had to go to the lawyer. You don't need a lawyer anymore to get a company certificate. You'll be able to download your CR12. You'll be able to get your tax compliance certificate, and you are ready, kaboom, to go and your business. Then you can come and visit agencies under MSME. If you're a young person, you can go to Youth Enterprise Fund, or you can go to Wezo Fund if you're a group of people, or you can go to, Women Enterprise Fund, a young woman, or even a woman, you can go there, a woman business, and get supported. So we made it easier. So first of all, just trying to remove a lot of transactional and the cost that we've been incurring to try and register a business or acquire a business entity. In itself, I think we have achieved a lot.
Let me just stop you there, Madam PS, because you've talked about the fact that how the government has ensured that, people, Kenyans, can be able to register companies easily. I'm not disputing that, but let me take you back. The Register of Companies, that is Joyce Koech, in February issued a Gazette notice saying that around 77 Kenyan companies risk being deregistered, citing non-operation. Let me just take you back to the fact that MSMEs, small, micro, medium enterprises, do not get to their second or fourth birthday. So yes, you can have all these interventions, but if they are not sustaining themselves, how is it going to help? Because you have to ensure that they're able to sustain. What exactly is the government doing for that?
So that one takes me to other commitment of unlocking access to affordable credit. And so that we can deepen financial inclusion and also capacity building programs that we have. We realize that for once to do a business, over and above having access to affordable credit and maybe knowing where your market is or having the capacity to do a market profiling so that then you can have access to guaranteed market even as you venture into business, all that requires a knowledge, first of all, information, a way through which you can get to understand which opportunities exist around you. It requires business skilling. It requires networking. It requires also digitization, so then you are able to appreciate opportunities that pop up in whichever spaces we are. We have to appreciate that today, where we are, especially as Kenya, we've made some very good progress in technology, and each and every home state today, at least they are connected in terms of mobile phone and mobile technology. So one of the reasons is the capacity building, the whole issue, how do we even, generate your business idea. So what you're doing, we have really, first of all, the State Department has created a platform for, coordinating the MSME sector and making sure we set up an ecosystem, a supportive MSME ecosystem. Because MSME, for one to do a business, is not just a one-off intervention. You need to be supported with an end-to-end intervention. We need to exist in an environment where you can gain the knowledge or skills, or the information that you need at the right time so that you take advantage of the opportunity. So we need to bring together all the players, those who are working in capacity building, those who are doing financing, those who are doing access to markets, and even investment. They need to operate there. So then you get supported. What has been happening and what has been affecting even or leading to high mortality rates of most MSME is because people think, okay, I just need access to credit. Fine, you can get credit, but where is the market? So you end up also investing in sectors which are not competitive, which are not high growth. So your business obviously will collapse. And I've seen this also happening. There is a way through which we like looking at what and copying what someone else is doing. For example, you find in a street, if someone is doing roasting maize there, you'll find another person also roasting maize there, and another person. So we get to saturate the market. But you see, we cannot blame them, especially if they don't have the knowledge on how to position your product in the market, how to do value addition. So we have quite a number of programs that we have rolled out. We are also partnering with the development partners. And, our development partners have been doing a lot. But the problem is it's not been well coordinated for us even to refer MSMEs. Okay. So everybody has been doing their own thing on their own. And then at the end of the day, you are just doing capacity building and you don't know where the MSME that you've spent a lot in doing business development, where they're going to go. There's no linkages. So we're also investing so much in both forward and backward and forward linkages, so that even as I do capacity building, part of that capacity is for this MSME to understand this business which I'm doing, where is the market? Where is the potential market? This business which I'm doing, what capacity do I need or capabilities do I need to access affordable credit to scale up my business? So when the company registrar says a number of companies are unoperational, of course, if it's a compliance issue, because we also want to encourage them. When you register your company, we want your company also to be active, and to be active, it means you don't just
with this
register
economy. If I may quote what Kenyans are saying, things are thick. So you can register, but if things are not working business-wise,
tell me which economy has got easy thing or loose thing across the world.
Are we where we were in terms of the cost of living? Because the issue is Kenyans feel like they don't have disposable income.
And I agree, but that is not only a challenge to the Kenyan economy.
It's one of the challenges.
And you know, for the last, it's or not only us, it's something that is affecting, is a failure, rather, a market failure across the globe. Even if you go to those economies, like even which people say they're doing well, like US, European, you'll find even people complaining of high taxation. People are always complaining because we do not exist in an isolated corner. We exist, and when it comes to the business environment, when things are not happening right. For example, the last 2 years, the geopolitical tension that has engulfed the European countries, especially Russia and Ukraine wars, they disrupt the global supply chain. We had issues to do with inflation. The dollar went, skyrocketed. It also affected because you see, globally, the dollar has got a huge impact even on local economies. When you are having the wars, the Gaza and Israel, we also get affected. When you are having climatic change issues, like for example, the flood that happens and the drought that we had about 2 years ago, the worst that we've ever had in the last 40 years, and you know agriculture is the backbone of our economy, we get affected. But what are we doing there? In our pillar of ensuring agricultural productivity, you remember President came in and he said the first thing he's going to do is to subsidize production. And that's how he halved the price of fertilizer. And today, as we speak, we've been able to realize more harvest, more yields, especially when it comes to grains, maize, than what we've had before.
Okay.
And you know, if we can get food today, if we can secure our food supply and make sure that we can access the prices of the food comes down, then other issues also are going to come down. You've seen the kind of intervention we've had even on the cost of fuel in this country. So much as we are having this challenge, you know, in our economy, and as you put it, things look thick.
Yeah.
Very soon, things are going to look better. Remember when we started off 2 years ago, where was the dollar? How was the dollar?
With that. We agree
now
with
it's
that.
come down. But, you know, we have to appreciate
But let me
that
just reel you back, Madam PS, because here's the thing, there is a trickle-down effect. We're already seeing high unemployment rate in the country, right? We have companies that are closing. These companies that are closing or are reducing their staff, it adds to the unemployment rate. So when I ask what exactly is the government doing to help the situation, regardless of what exactly is happening in the geopolitical scene, that's what I want to know.
And so that's why I'm telling you, out of our 5 commitments, I've told you the interventions around decriminalization of work is part of also securing jobs to majority of Kenyans. Remember, I talked about close to 17 million Kenyans being in the informal sector. We want to empower them so that then they can create their own secure and sustainable jobs. I used the story of Mama Mboga there. I gave us an example.
I completely
That one you understand.
Yes.
Secondly, I've talked about the efforts around easing the regulatory frameworks that we have and reducing the burden, the cost burden attendant to compliance. And I've talked about the digitization agenda that you're doing. That's also part of reducing. So thirdly, I've talked about the efforts that you're making around access.
No problem.
Ensuring that we unlock access to affordable credit.
Okay, because of the interest of time, yeah?
Yeah.
Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi said that the government and the private sector in general will harmonize a document on the ease of doing business, which will be launched in April. April is next week. Where are we at?
Yeah, so we've had a very consultative engagement with the private sector, and this one arose last year. It gained momentum last year. Of course, you know what happened last year on the finance bill, and His Excellency the President reached out to everybody, to every Kenyans and every sector, that we need to engage in a dialogue. Kenya is for all of us. It is our responsibility, all of us, the citizen and our leaders. We come together and see how do we move forward, how do we grow economy. So likewise, in the MSME sector, or rather in the business sector, private sector, which you're mentioning, also we needed conversation around there and ask ourselves, how do we ease the cost of doing business? With the document? Yeah, so progressively, we've had draft and we've had their input, and we have actually progressed. The bill went to Parliament, and we're going to launch. And this is a legal framework that, or rather, a policy framework that has had input from the private sector. Okay. I'm just falling short of saying private sector led, because we brought them on the table. It is in our benefit as a government if the private sector thrive. Because like I said, the corporates are only 2%. And all this intervention we are mobilizing around the MSME sector is to see how can we grow. How can we even expand the 2%, increase it, so then we create some sustainable jobs? And also, how can we make sure that the micro MSME get to grow, scale up to small, and from small they scale up to medium, and we get to create jobs and stimulate economic participation in Kenya, so that nobody is left behind.
Yeah. Let's talk about other issues, and I want us to touch on the Hustler Fund. 2+ years since the launch of the Hustler Fund. Where are we at? How many Kenyans have borrowed? How many have actually paid their loans and on time?
Thank you. I was expecting that. There is no way you are not going to ask that. Thank you. So again, that was part of our commitment also, deepening financial inclusion and ensuring that Kenyans have access to affordable credit. So Hustler Fund is a policy intervention. Let me begin by that. A policy intervention that we came up with to correct the existing market failure in the credit market.
How many have borrowed?
So let me just talk about the market failure. Yeah, what was the market failure? Sometimes it's good to give this background and the
interest of time.
In the interest of time, is that the first market failure was that majority of Kenyans, and most of them young people and women, will not be served by the commercial bank or the mainstream sector because they're being considered as being a high risk. So the other market failure was most of those people, most of them, and the kind of our culture could not also be served because they could not be trusted. Once you lend to them,
in 6 minutes. We have 6 minutes.
So in 1 minute, where are we on Hustler Fund? We've been able to disburse more than 65 billion in terms of growing our loan portfolio. And then we have been able to reach out to 25.5 million Kenyans. Remember, we introduced mandatory saving.
How many have paid on time?
I'm going to tell you how many have paid on time. So let me just give you key statistics. I know you're interested in that, and I'll come to that. And so we've been able to introduce mandatory saving as part of also de-risking and also making sure that beneficiaries also have a secured future. So where we are, we have mobilized 4 billion in saving, close to 400 million voluntary saving, another almost 500 million in short-term saving, and around 3 million in long-term savings. So that's a good story. So how many of people have paid? We have injected into Hustler Fund a capitalization of about 13.5 billion today as we speak. We've grown the loan portfolio to to about 65 billion as we speak today. That talks about a good repayment rate. Our NPL, non-performing loan portfolio today, is at 20%. This is way below what is at the market. Yesterday, I was reading a story in one of our daily. Let me just say this because it's very important. Because sometimes we get to criticize government intervention and build a certain cloud around them and making Kenyans actually not to benefit from them, to get to shy from benefiting from them. So Association of Digital Lenders in Kenya yesterday, of course I'm not part of association. Hustler Fund is not yet part of association. Yesterday, they decried that their NPL has grown up to 40%. I'm telling you today that the Hustler Fund NPL is 20%. Is actually, Hustler Fund is doing well in terms of repayment. The challenge that we had were challenges that we had at the beginning, the first 2 months. Of course, you see, we launched Hustler Fund when our political environment was still very hostile. And there were those ones that were saying were still hurt and were saying, any initiative that you're coming up with, there was yet to heal, were saying, you know,
all right, Madam,
do not repay. So that's what affected us. But right now, we are good. Okay,
so the Auditor General's report unearthed serious anomalies. Hustler Fund loans disbursed in the financial year to June 2024 revealed that some were either below legal age of 18 or had not yet been born. Talk to us about that.
It is not possible, let me say this, to be eligible for Hustler Fund. Number one.
So are you rubbishing the Auditor General's report?
Now let me just, let me give you this narration. I'm not rubbishing. And I have no intention to rubbish. I acknowledge her report. But also let me say this. What is the eligibility of Hustler Fund? To be eligible on Hustler Fund, number one, you must have a valid ID. And Hustler Fund does not register a person. So when you get onto a platform, *254#, we don't ask you to state your ID number because we leverage. It's an opt-in service that leverage on already existing data in our service providers, of course, which can be traced back to the institution of origin, the source of the information. Secondly, we say to be eligible for Hustler Fund, you must have an active line that at least which must have operated for 90 days.
So then why is the system loaning people?
Let me just talk. We are not loaning. Now I'm giving you. We are not loaning anybody.
But these are details from the Auditor General's report.
Those were issues of data reconciliation, my dear. Those were issues of data reconciliation. And I will tell you how they came about. We acknowledge those issues. And I will tell you how they came about. So what we do, we don't register anybody. We don't register telephone numbers, but you and me appreciate that the progress we made about integrating the telephone number and your ID. You see, today if you have a telephone number, mobile number is well integrated with your ID, by the way. So if I want to know, if I were to go and check who you are, whether you are an adult, your telephone number is as good as your ID number because it captures those details. So what happened, the Auditor General, because this is purely a digital product, the Auditor General does not audit on a live environment. The Auditor General, she comes and cuts away data.
But does the misrepresentation lead to losses?
It doesn't lead to losses because you see, in a normal audit process, if you are not found, you are not able to make a conclusion to understand and figure out why this is not informing this, then you write a management letter. So she raised the issue and say, I'm not able to connect here, because I've looked at this sample. Of course, she was able to highlight the sample and say it's not making sense because we can see the date of birth here is recorded as this. And then we sent back to our technical team. They were able to run through to requery the data that she provided, and today as we speak, they are correct ages we reconcile the data and you can see their correct ages. And you can even prove this. If she was fair enough to even now reach out to those people, because you can get the telephone number and you call those individuals. Let me just finish this. Call this individual to find out if I told her underage, she will still get to know that indeed these people, but probably that was not her work at that particular time, also looking at the tight schedule that she works with. But we have since requeried the data, reconciled, and there is no way we can lend to an underage. Okay, the Auditor General equally raised an issue with the management of the program, since Hustler Fund relies heavily on Safaricom, Airtel, and Telcom. So let's talk about that. Is there a plan to have government loan management system? Yes, so first of all, Hustler Fund was to address market failure, right? So it was not to come and crowd out the private sector. We are not competing the private sector. Our work as a government is to create an enabling environment for the private sector and to complement what they're doing, because if they grow and create jobs for our people there. So we leveraged, and remember I talked about us now coordinating the MSME sector. So we decided, instead as a government, going again into the pockets of Kenyans, asking them, help us so that we can now come up with our own mobile network, system, like have our own kind of a telco company. It would have meant that Kenya would have we are going to dig deep into their pockets. Again, also saying we need to set up our own Kenyan bank, fully government, so that then they provide the lending infrastructure. Again, it would have meant that Kenyans go back there. But then it would have meant that now government wants to do business. Business belongs to the private sector, us to leverage. So this is a special partnership between us and the private sector, and there is no material injury because we are leveraging on what is already in the market. Because even the private sector, that the banks and the mobile, the telcos that you are partnering with, they understand that is good actually to nurture good borrowing behavior to, so that we can have majority of Kenyans who can now become their customer, and in turn they will grow their customer base. Finally, a red flag has also been raised on the lack of credit policy and collection strategy for non-performing loans. How practical is it? So again, this is a very special initiative which we started. I must say that we didn't even have a prototype. And in the whole region, if you are to talk even in the private sector, they will tell you this kind of initiative is a very innovative initiative. So we are progressing day by day. You remember some of the issues that she had raised earlier were issues to do even with some data which could not be found. Remember the first report, it was about ID and stuff. Those were the issues of the system. So over time we are improving. Even the private sector, our partners are also rebuilding and enhancing their system to accommodate that. So equally, now that we've had this experience, 2 years and let me say almost a half down the line, we are now working on the policy framework and especially the credit around there. But as I've said, even if we came up with the credit policy, where do we want this credit policy to influence? The credit policy will influence the private sector to make the market better, the credit market better and accessible for Kenyans. So one of the areas that we will want really to reform is the collateral system. And that's why during our second anniversary, in December last year, we also launched the Hustler Fund Behavioral Credit Rating System, which is a 9-band rating system from A1 to C3. Of course, you have A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, B3, C1, C2, C3, with A being excellent, and of course C categories being very poor. So this rating, we want Kenyans to start really embracing it, because this rating eventually will become their collateral, will become their security. They'll now be served better, be served more. Their credit worthiness, they will now have the credit rating will provide footprint which now the mainstream financing sector can access the creditworthiness and be able to serve them more at affordable rate as opposed to what has been held. So even if we're to come up with policy, is a policy that will also want the market to appreciate.
This conversation will not end today. I believe maybe we can have another sit down where we can tackle some of the issues, but thank you so much. That is the Principal Secretary, MSMEs Department, Susan Mangeni. That's all we had for you on KTN Prime. I'm Ashley Mazuri. On behalf of Jesse Rogers and Marisha Witi, good night.